has been a while since I made one of these videos. But welcome back if you're one of my 35 subscribers, and if you're not, please consider subscribing. I create true crime videos that I usually try to steer away from the popular cases, so if you want to listen to lesser known cases, then this is the channel for you. Sometimes we delve into the psychology of it as well, but sometimes not today. But yeah, if that's your cup of tea, then consider subscribing. I'm hoping that I can start uploading a lot more regularly now, because I'm off for summer for uni pretty much. I'm on placement at the minute, so I have a lot more free time. So I'm going to try and upload a lot more now. If you have any cases that you want me to cover or you want to listen to, comment them down below. I will be covering popular cases every so often. Like, I've been thinking about doing the Madeleine McCann case next, but most of the cases will be lesser known. So if there's any cases in particular that you haven't really heard anyone cover or you want to hear being covered, then comment them down below and I will try my best to cover that case next. We'll get into the video. I just want to give a little trigger warning before we begin. There are mentions of sexual assault, rape, miscarriage, suicide. If any of that is triggering, please click off the video now, because a video is not worth your mental health. But if you're sticking around, then let's get into this weird case. So our case is about a lady called Juana Barazza. I'm just going to let you all know now that I will butcher probably all of these names because they are Spanish names and I don't speak Spanish, so please forgive me for that. Juana was born in the rural part of North Mexico in 1958. Her father was a police officer while her mother was an alcoholic prostitute. Juana's infancy was quite rocky, with her mother leaving her father for a married man who became a father figure in Juana's life. Growing up, Juana would barely speak to her mother, and her relationship with her was described as being very rocky. She didn't know her biological father, and she was never taught how to read or write. Moving into her early teens, around the age of 12 or 13, Juana's mother would pimp her out to a man called Jose Lugo in exchange for 3 beers. I couldn't believe that whenever I first read that. Juana at first believed that this exchange was some sort of joke or a setup, and when Jose took her back to his house, she waited for her mother or her stepfather, who she had trusted so much, to come and save her, but no one ever showed up. Juana experienced abuse from this man for 4 or 5 years, and he essentially used her as a sex slave, and she ended up becoming pregnant to him twice at the age of 13 and 16. One source said that both of the pregnancies ended in a miscarriage, but then another source said that she had her first son to this man Jose. So I'm not actually quite sure if her eldest son was the son of Jose or not. After years of torture from Jose, Juana's uncles eventually found out that she was basically being imprisoned by this man, and they saved her from Jose. It had turned out that Juana's mother told her family that she had ran away with her rapist out of her own will. Juana eventually left Mexico City when her mother passed away. She went on to have several failed marriages, and she ended up having 4 children, the eldest of which ended up dying in a gang shooting at the age of 24. So Juana's life is filled with trauma from the get-go, essentially. Like, her mum and dad are in a broken marriage, and then her mother pimps her out, and now her eldest son has died in a gang shooting. I just can't imagine the amount of trauma that she had to go through. During the 80s and the 90s, Juana held a number of different jobs to provide for her children. However, she was still struggling. She worked as a street vendor, selling gelatine and socks, and eventually toured central Mexico as a masked wrestler called La Dama del Silencio. I think that's how you pronounce it, but in English it means the Lady of Silence, and she chose this name due to her own silent and shy personality. By 1995, Juana was still struggling and turned to robbery. She had just given birth to her 4th child, and she began stealing from shops and soon turned to burglarizing homes. Only a year later, Juana and her friend Martinez made a plan to steal from the elderly who were living by themselves. The pair would dress in white and pretend to be nurses so that they could gain access to the elderly person's home. They came up with this great plan where they were making money, and it didn't seem like the police were even on their tail. Like, they had no idea that all of these burglaries were all linked to each other. However, while Juana believed that this was a great way for her to get money and things were going smoothly, she didn't realise that her friend had been creating a parallel plan with her romantic partner, who was a corrupt federal police officer. The couple created a plan to rob Juana. Martinez's partner met Juana after a burglary that she committed alone and demanded 12,000 pesos in return for not arresting her. By the year 2000, Juana returned as a wrestler where she had once been earning 300 to 500 pesos per fight, and her financial situation became extremely dire. Just a little warning to bear with me while I try to pronounce these next few names. I'm going to try my best. So we'll chat a little bit about the murders now. The number of elderly people being murdered in Mexico City increased in 1998. Media were the first to speculate that it was actually a serial killer, which police were constantly denying. And they created this persona called El Mataveijitas. They used El as it was presumed that the killer was a male. They never ever thought that it was going to be a female killer. Police continued to deny that the number of cases were linked, and so many innocent people were imprisoned and accused of killing these people that Juana was basically going out and killing. Juana's first victim was a woman called Maria de la Luz Gonzalez Ania. When Juana gained access to Gonzalez's apartment, Gonzalez made comments about Juana which she deemed to be derogatory, and Juana was not happy about this one bit, and in the heat of the anger she beat Gonzalez before fatally strangling her with her bare hands. Juana was using her wrestling techniques which she had learnt to strangle her victims, and she's seen murdering elderly people as a projection of her anger towards her mother, who had essentially abused her whole life. After the murder of Gonzalez, Juana did not kill for another 3 months, and it was believed that the only reason why she went and murdered again was due to the hype surrounding El Mataveijitas. And they believed that this whole hype around this name inspired Juana to strike again. There was little to no information on Juana's victims, most likely due to her only admitting to 4 murders. However, police believed that Juana did murder about 46 women. She would gain access to their homes by dressing as city council nurses or social workers, and later was actually able to acquire a real nurse's uniform, which, you know, if a nurse came to your door in a real uniform, you would assume that they are there to see you, like maybe you'd forgotten an appointment, especially elderly, like they're more prone to forgetting. It was such a smart way to target vulnerable people. Like, I couldn't believe it whenever I first read it. Juana's method of murder was strangulation, using whatever was available to her, from her bare hands to curtain cords, and she even once used a stethoscope. She would then rob the victims' homes and take a trophy with her, which was usually a religious item, so she would steal images of saints, crucifixes and Bibles. From this detail, police initially had the idea that the killer was a man with a confused sexual identity who had probably been abused by their mother or grandmother and wanted to get revenge using older women. Eyewitnesses also described the killer as a large woman, and because of this, police just automatically assumed that the killer was a transgender woman and began arresting transgender women who were prostitutes. In 2005, Juana got into a relationship with a taxi driver called Jose Francesco Torres Herrera. He became her accomplice, and more attacks began occurring, more so during the nighttime now instead of the daytime. In September 2005, Juana had picked out her next victim, an 82-year-old woman called Carmen Camila Gonzalez Miguel. Miguel was an upper-class woman and the mother of a well-known criminologist. This led to the launch of a special operation called Operation Parks and Gardens. Officers would patrol in the areas that the killer was most active in. Pamphlets were distributed to the elderly to make them aware of the dangers of strangers. New sketches were created, and police even paid elderly women to act as bait in park gardens. At this time, police were still looking for a transgender woman and had arrested 49 transgender prostitutes at this point, even if they didn't even match the evidence collected from the crime scenes. After this, the killing slowed down so much so that the investigators believed that the killer committed suicide, so perhaps Juana realised that she really messed up going for a criminologist's mother. So she was probably just trying to be a lot more careful now at this point. It wasn't until January 2006 that Juana would commit her last crime. 84-year-old Maria de los Reyes Alfaro had been followed home from the market, and Juana asked her for some water. Juana then proceeded to fatally stab and strangle Maria with a stethoscope. On fleeing the scene, Juana had been seen by a tenant of Maria's. Neighbours and patrolling officers managed to stop Juana from escaping, and she was then taken into custody for questioning. When Juana was taken in, the police tried to make it seem as though they had been Juana's tale the whole time. They made her pose beside the eyewitness sketches of the Mataveijitas. This was believed to be an attempt to mislead the public into believing the police had always been close to finding her, but they knew this wasn't the case because Juana had previously visited the police station, and she'd also done a TV interview on wrestling just a week before she was arrested, and not once did they bat an eyelid towards her, so she was never suspected as the murderer. 2 years after she was arrested in 2008, Juana was tried for 30 murders. However, she was only ever found guilty of 16 and 12 robberies, and she was finally sentenced to 759 years in prison. But yeah, that's the case. I've also decided to include the names of all the women who were suspected of being murdered by Juana and Juana's method of murder. I would have spoke a bit about them, but I'm struggling just to say the few names that I included in this video, and I did not want to butcher anymore, so I've just decided to put in a wee list. But that's all for today's true crime case. Once again, if there's any cases that you want me to cover, please comment them down below. Doesn't matter if they're popular or lesser known. Like I said, I do want to do some popular cases too, but I would like to cover more lesser known cases. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, subscribe and like. You would be helping a gal out, and hopefully I will see you in another video. Bye.